Welcome back to part 2 of this tutorial. We are starting on page 2, and this is what we will be making. We have a nice flip out here. It is magnetic. This is where the magnets come into play, and we do have the fold outs. Move this, and here is a nice size pocket on the side that we will be doing. I'm going to remove these, put them off to the side, and we're going to get started on this. In your paper pack, locate your second sheet of this. We're going to remove it. We're going to measure over 6 inches and cut it. Put this one in reserves. We're going to flip it around so that we have the ornament up here. Measure over 8 inches and cut it. You will stick the small piece in reserves. Now, one thing that we are going to do, and we're going to wait to the very end so that we can pick and choose which scrap we want to use for cutting out the bear. The bear is actually located, so we're not going to get into it yet because we'll get into this paper shortly, is on this. So I suggest, like I did, is wait till the end. Look at our scrap pieces, which one I don't want to use for a picture mat, which one is just a small scrap, and then I cut them out. So we will do that at the end. We need to prepare our foldouts. Grab a piece of cardstock, measure over 6 1/4 inches and cut it. Put the smaller half in reserves, turn this, measure over 8 inches and cut it. Get your scoreboard out, and at 5 1/2 inches we are going to score it, and then from that score line we are going to measure over 1/8 of an inch, and we are going to score on that. Let's fold up. Now, what we want to do is flip this over, and in the middle here, and it's easiest to do this if you put a ruler up and mark your 4 inch where 4 inches is. Now what we are going to do is fold in straight to create a point. And we're going to fold in this side and try to get it as even as you can. There we go. Okay, let's go ahead and apply some glue and glue these flaps back. As we did before, and we will have the inner score marks showing, we're just going to pinch this just like that. We are going to put this flush. This is 8 inches long, so is this. So sometimes just putting them up like this, and then we're going to pinch it. We're going to turn it over, and we are going to tack that down. And then we can move this back. Now, in our paper pack, we will find this sheet with the bears. We are going to measure over 5 1/2 inches and cut it. Put this one in reserves. Turn this, measure down 7 7/8 and cut it. The small piece goes in reserves. And let's just make sure we are going to fit, showing a little bit of black on the bottom, and we'll have a little on the side. And let's go ahead and trim off about 1/8 from this side. Okay. What we are going to do is, looking at it like this, just flip it over. We are going to, make sure I'm on the right way, and I am. We need to make a mark with our pencil halfway through there. So 4 inches would be 8, so I think we're short of that, so I think it's going to be 3 15/16 is going to be our middle. let's go ahead and fold as straight as we can. And if we need to trim it up, we will do that. I'm not so straight there, but let's see how that works. So as far as this part, I am going to clip off with my paper cutter going along that. Now, once you cut off your flap, sometimes it's easier to get this straight so that you're going the same. So mine is, and I am going to apply my glue. And I'm going to mount this down. Now remember, if you're having a hard time getting straight and everything, do know that we are going to stick bling around the edges, and you will not be able to see any unstraight or anything that's off. So that is the good thing about this album. And now let's go ahead and flip this over. I got glue seeping out. I've got to fix that. And we're going to work on the inside. We will need one magnet, so let's take care of that right now. And we are going to place that magnet just right here. We'll worry about the other side as soon as we get the other fold out on. Perfect. Okay. In your paper pack, let's locate this sheet. If you flip it over, it looks like this. We're going to do a better fit this time for the inside of that fold out. Let's measure over 5 1/4 inches and slice it. The larger piece goes in our reserves. Now let's turn it, measure down 7 7/8 and cut it. The smaller piece goes in reserves. Now if we just lay this up just like this may be an easier way, because it is kind of tough to measure up after you, or to fold in and stuff. If you just bring it up like this and you can see the black tip, first of all, let's flip this over and kind of line it up to where you're giving yourself some room between the scoring line, and that you have some black showing here and here, and you can see your tip. And holding it, it might just be easier just to hold it like this down and now fold to get a better fit. And I believe that's the way I taught it in some of my other tutorials, to get a nicer fit. And then we can just fold in that side. And it's definitely much quicker when we do it like this. And we are going to trim off these extra little flaps. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is put this on my trimmer and trim that off. Okay, so before you glue down, let's make sure that you fit, and I'm fitting pretty good here, leaving it straight. So now I'm going to apply my glue, and we are going to mount it. Okay, let's find the sentiment in here, and we will need one of our satin bows. In your reserves, you will find this sentiment. That's the one we want. Let's go ahead and use our paper cutter and just cut right on down. We will put the rest of it back into reserves. Okay, I got mine out, and I am going to go ahead and finish up cutting around. I finished with mine, and you do not need to back this with black. If you would like to ink around your edges with Olive Grove or some other ink, go ahead. All we do here is just place this right like this. And then we put the bow right here. Use a little hot glue there. Now, all I'm going to do here is measure a piece that's going to fit from the top to the bottom, and I'm going to glue that down. So let's go ahead and do that. Next is going to be our bling, and this is how I said let's place that first. We are going to line the side of this with bling. So if you got any cutting mistakes, this is where it's going to cover it up. And you are going to clip off pieces, and we are going to glue that down going all the way around. So let's do that. Before we go further, you will have noticed when you cut these down, we are going to reserve those. We will be using those, so just make sure that every scrap we use, that you do not throw it in the trash. It may seem like it's minimal or whatever, but you never know when I'm going to grab it and use a scrap to decorate or do something. Okay, for the next step, what we're going to do is the first thing before we get into the sentiment we need is we are going to get our poinsettias ready. I am going to get my center in this. I'm going to use this one. Gold leaves, if you have them. I do need a green leaf as well. Some filler if you'd like. I think I used a couple a bit. You will want your poinsettia. Okay, if you have a leaf like this, what I'm going to do is just tear it. And I'm going to place this, because it is going to get covered. And I'm going to use a little bit of hot glue to make this go quicker. And I'm just going to stick that out like this. I am going to grab a gold leaf, and again, I'm going to rub this a little bit and get most of that off. I'm going to put a little hot glue there. Okay. Now what I am going to do is get my poinsettia. Now my pearls in the middle are still quite wet, but I'm just going to place that right like this, and I'm only going to put glue right in the center so I can still lay things over it. There. Okay, the poinsettia, we can go ahead and glue that one down. And that just goes like this. If you've got some filler to go underneath, you can go ahead and lift a leaf here and get that underneath. And I'm going to make this a little bit smaller, and then I'm going to glue it in there underneath. And then I can reshape this. Now is the time where we do need to get a leaf buried underneath here, but before we glue that down so that we get a good placement, let's pull out of our reserves the Christmas morning sentiment. It looks like this, and we are going to get a piece of black cardstock to mount this onto, and I'm just going to grab out of my scraps here. Apply a little glue. And this is the easiest way to do this. And then I'm going to cut around it. I am going to leave about a 1/16 inch of black showing around this, the edges. Now you can use the paper cutter or you can use your scissors. Either way, I'm just going to cut it. Okay. Now, the idea of this is to kind of create a little bit of a pocket. So, all we are going to do, and I suggest that we use a little bit of glue, or use, glue is probably the best one for right now. And I'm going to show you what I do for this. Since this is going all the way in there, I'm just going to look at it like this, flip it over, and I'm going to put the glue right down here. We are going to allow this to dry. And I had this down a little further, it looks like. And I'm just going to kind of push that down like that. And let that dry. Let's slide in some of the green right now while we're at it. And all I did there was slide it like that and make sure that that's glued down. So I'm going to pinch off a little bit of that because I don't need it. Add some glue. There. And if you want to go ahead and add a little more filler up through here, you can do that. I am. Or if you're not using it, then don't. The only thing missing is the tag, and you will do that at the end. And you'll be able to slip a tag right on in there. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to getting the second side of the fold out on there. Grab a piece of cardstock, and you're going to measure over 5 1/4 inches and cut it. You'll put the other side in reserves. Let's turn that, measure down 8 inches and cut it. Let's get our scoreboard out. And we are 5 1/2 inches wide at the, or 5 1/4 inches wide, sorry. At the 4 1/2 mark, let's make our first score. You are going to measure over from the first score a 1/16 of an inch, and you are going to score it. And I'm going to eyeball mine, and I think that is good. And we are going to fold. Okay. If yours is all dry, then you can flip it open. We are going to do like we did before. Crease it on the outside score mark, so you can still see the inner score mark. Place it here, and just to get it straight, just kind of get it like that. Pinch it, turn it over, and we're going to tack that down. And there. Let's grab the other side of our magnet really quick and open this up. Put your magnet down on its mate through the paper. Let's go ahead in the middle of that magnet, put a dot of glue. Now, before you go and flip it over, let's go ahead and make sure that we crease it on the inner score, so that this will lay over right. All right, now just naturally let it fall. And now you can lift it up. You see where that's supposed to be. That is the middle of that magnet, and now you can place the other mate over, and when you flip this over, it is going to hit that. So let's go ahead and cut our panel that is going to fit on this. In your reserves, you will find this long sheet. What I want you to do is turn it and measure down 7 7/8 and cut it. You'll put the bottom portion in your reserves. Now, looking at it like this, I want you to turn it upside down. I always try to be consistent with how I do my cuts. We are going to measure down over 4 1/4 inches and cut it. Now, this should fit, and it's going to leave you black around the edges. So we are just going to glue that right on down over that magnet, centering it. As best as you can. Okay, let's work on the inside. Now, in your reserves, you will find this, and what you are going to do is turn it and measure down a total of 7 7/8 and cut it. The small portion goes in reserves. Now let's measure over 4 1/4 and cut it. This piece will fit on the inside. Let's set this aside. Let's grab those teddy bears, and let's grab some scrap black cardstock. And you will want your pencil for this. It will help you if I can find mine. What I want you to do is measure in about a 1/2 inch and draw a little line this way. And then I also want you to measure a 1/2 inch this way and draw a line. All that is our guide on trying to keep this straight. So we are going to go ahead and glue this down first. I've got mine glued down. Now, the easiest way now is to look at it like this with your edge here. And we are going to be using our 1/2 inch punch, so go ahead and make a line right here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put this on our cutting, our paper cutter, and we are going to cut a line, cut this straight across. Now I'm going to show you what that looks like. This is what you will have. So what we're going to do is I try to put this corner up to where I think it's going to be on the design first. And then I go across this way, all the way across to the end. And then I'll come back and do that. This is what you will have. And if you notice, now this part is pretty simple. And all we are going to do is these are going to end up flapping back and over. So let's grab our scissors, and all we're going to do is snip right here and cut a notch out. Okay. You can go ahead and we'll trim that in just a moment, but that notch will help us because now we can just move the corner of this up to the corner of that, and we will line this up to where the tip is the same with the paper because you can see it, making sure that this is as well. Once you have the position of where this is supposed to be, you are going to pinch it, and you're going to fold back your flaps. Before you tack it down, you're going to check to make sure your fold is okay. Now, you are going to get some overhang, and you can clip that, okay? I am a little off, so that tells me, okay, when I was lining this up, I need to start over. The tip to the tip, and this needs to be straight across the top, and this needs to be over. So I'm going to try this again. It's not going to show or do anything, so I just want to make sure here. And then I'm going to look again before I glue this down. And that is much better, and that's what you should look like. Now I can go ahead and tack these down. And there we are. Now let's grab our second one and we are going to do the exact same thing. We are going to have a crisscross motion over that. Grab a piece of cardstock. I'm going to use the same one I did before. I'm going to measure in the 1/2 inch to help me with my guiding, and a 1/2 inch here. And now I'm going to apply my glue, and I'm going to mount this down. I've got this mounted. I measured up 1/2 inch to accommodate my punch. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do my punch right across. I'm going to clip out my notches. And again, coming down to the corner here and making sure I am even here and even here. I'm going to pinch it, and I'm going to pull back my flaps and check my work. Mine is done. In your reserves, you will find the sentiment, Jingle Bells. We are going to mount that to black cardstock. We are going to leave just a little bit of black showing all the way around. Cut that out and mount it right here. I've got mine mounted, and when I put the glue on, I'm only going to go around the bottom and here, and I am going to leave this little bit. Whoops, that's not good. Eesh. I still got enough glue. And that goes right there. This page is done. We are ready to mount this right here. So let's glue that down. I've got mine. Close it. You should latch. Flip it over. We are going to run score tape like a picture frame around the edges, and we're going to do 2 down the center. I've got mine mounted, and you should still be latching. You should be able to open it up. Turn your page. Let's move on to page 3. Page 3. Page 3 is very simple, and we are going to do this. In your paper pack, let's open up and find, it's in the back here, this page. Let's get that out of there. We are going to measure over 6 inches and cut it. Let's go ahead and put this in our reserves. We are going to turn this and measure over 8 inches and cut it. Okay, set this off to the side here, and we do have this. Let's open up our book. We are going to go ahead and mount this in our book. So let's go ahead and like a picture frame and put the score tape around the outside, one down the middle, and let's mount this in our book. We're going to work right in our book. Let's set this off to the side. Now, with this, what we are going to do is, you can see that there is a border, and we do want that, but we also want the stripes. So let's turn this, and we are going to cut off just above this tan lacy trim and just slice this all the way down. This is what you are going to have. Let's take this, let's apply a little score tape to it. We're going to cut off any score tape that peeks out the side. Grab your book. We're going to remove the score tape, and we are going to line this up right with this side and put this right across the bottom. I've got mine down. Now let's grab this, and what we're going to do, looking at it like this, is we're going to cut along the side here, right where the white is, right on down. This is what you should have. Put this off in your reserves. This is what we are going to work with. This is one of our pockets. But we need to back this with black cardstock. So let's get some black cardstock from our reserve pile. Easiest way to do this, grab a little glue. Let's put glue on the back of this. And I am going to leave a 1/16 of black showing on the left side and on the top. Now I'm just going to put this right on my paper cutter, and I'm going to cut it right down here, leaving about a 1/16, and then I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to do the same thing down here. This is what yours should look like. Let's get our score tape, and we don't want any score tape underneath here. We're going to flip this over, and we're going to put score tape around the sides. Now, I'm going to remove my score tape, and from the top of this page, we're going to measure down about 3 inches, and we're going to center this. So about 3 inches or so, right about there. And all I'm going to do is mount this right like that. Let's get our next pocket. In your reserves, you will have this other sheet. So let's turn it, measure down 8 inches, and cut it. Put this in reserves. This we're going to use on this other side, but we're looking to get this. And what we are going to do with this is the same thing we did before. We are going to cut it right across the top this way. Then we're going to turn it, and we are going to cut it up this way. These are the pieces that you will have. Remember, we do need this for this side, so put this off where you can find it. This, just stick in your reserves. And we're going to do the same thing we did with this pocket. Let's mount this on the black cardstock and trim around and leaving about a 1/16 of black showing. This is what you should have. Flip it over, apply the score tape around the three sides, remove your score tape. Then what we're going to do is come right down to the bottom of this, lining it up with the sides here and here, and we are going to mount this pocket right like that. This is what you should have. We're going to go ahead and measure enough lace to go across the side for this pocket and that pocket. And we're going to glue that down. Now what we need to do is decorate over here. I did grab one of Julie Herrick's porcelain poinsettias. I did snap off the green leaves on this one, which is very easy to do. You just snap them off the back. These are pretty strong and sturdy, so you can see that it's taken me just a bit. If you cannot snap them off, you could always use some sort of tool to snap them. I've got a couple gold leaves, and I am going to glue those down. One right here and one right here. I'm going to glue down a poinsettia right here. And I'm going to glue down the white poinsettia right here. And then I'm going to go get my sentiment that goes across there. In your reserves, you will find this sentiment. We are going to glue this down to black cardstock. And we're going to do like we did before, leaving about a 1/16 or so of black showing around it. And then we're going to cut around that. I've got mine ready to go. I'm just going to apply some glue here. And this one slides right like this to where you can still see the Merry Christmas. This page is done. Let's move on to page 4. Good morning. We are on page 4, and it's a fold out with a pocket and a pocket. This is what we are going to create. In your reserves, grab this. This is the perfect size. Also, in your reserves, you will find this. On the back side, it looks like this. We're going to measure over 6 inches and cut that. Set this off to the side. What we want to do now is grab a piece of cardstock that's 8.5 inches wide. And we're going to turn that and measure over 4 3/4 of an inch and cut it. So our final piece is going to be 8.5 inch wide and 4 3/4 inches. Grab your 1/2 inch punch, and we are going to punch along the top edge. This is what you should have. Let's go ahead and apply glue to the back of the front of our pocket. And we are going to mount this right in the center somewhere. We'll have some flaps off to the side. Now what we're going to do is grab our main page and apply score tape to the bottom. Where's my score tape? Here we go, the edge. We're going to remove the score tape, and we are going to mount our pocket and wrap the edges around the back. And we're going to glue those down. Now grab that one piece that we had set off to the side. We're going to add some glue, or you can use your score tape like we did the other side. And we are going to place this right down at the bottom, going across. Let's work on our fold out. In your reserves, if you have a piece of black cardstock, grab it. If you're working with a new piece of cardstock, I want you to measure over 5 3/4 of an inch and cut it. Put the other side in reserves. We have 5 3/4 inches across. Turn this, measure down 7 1/8 of an inch, and cut it. Get your scoreboard out. We are 5 3/4 inches across. At 5 1/16, we are going to score it. And again, I have to. Then you're going to move over from that point, measure over a 1/16 again, and score it. Let's fold on our score lines. Go ahead and fold in all your, like so. In your reserves, you will find this. It looks like this on the back. This should fit perfectly right on the front side with the flap off to the right. Just fold in all your flaps there. And let's glue that down. This is what you should look like. Let's set that off to the side and get the paper we need for the inside of that fold out. In your paper pack, let's get this sheet out. Okay, so let's turn this all the way over. Let's measure over 4 7/8 and cut it. Put this one off to the side. We'll be getting at this in a moment. Now let's turn this, and we're going to measure down 7 inches and cut it. The smaller piece goes in our reserves. Looking at our fold out, if you flip it open and your flaps are off to the left, you will notice that this will be a perfect fit. Now what we need to do is get at this. So what I suggest you do is on your paper cutter on the right side of, let's do it this way, right above the chimney, let's just cut it right like that. This goes in reserves. Now on the right hand side of that gift, we're just going to cut that. This is what you should have. We're going to leave this side alone. What we are going to do is cut up and around this. It's easier for me to start just like this, and I'm just going to cut this. Once you have your piece like this, we are going to put score tape underneath this side and over here. And then we're going to remove our score tape, and we are going to mount that. One thing about these, just make sure your score tape is down good, and when you put these down, you make sure that you rub it really good to get that score tape down. So now all I'm going to do is match this corner to that corner. And I'm going to apply glue to the back of this. And I'm going to center and mount this, making sure that I'm nowhere near my score marks. This is what you should have. We do need to attach this, so we are going to go on the outside of the score, and we're just going to slide that right in there. Pinch it, turn it over, oops, and tack that down. This page is almost done. All we need to do is grab some lace, measure across, and glue it down to our pocket. This page is now complete. Let's go ahead and put score tape around like a picture frame, one down the middle, and mount this in our book. Mine's in my book. Let's move on to page 5. Page 5 is this. We have a nice fold out, a pocket here, and a pocket here. In your paper pack, let's find this sheet. Measure over 6 inches and cut it. This side goes in your reserves. Let's go ahead and turn that, measure over 8 inches and cut it. Put this one off in your reserves. We need to do our pocket. Grab a piece of cardstock, measure over 4.5 inches and cut it. Grab your deep edge punch and let's punch across the top. Apply score tape to the bottom of your page. Oops, I got some stuff on the back of that. Remove it and mount your pocket, wrapping your flaps around the back and tacking that down. This is where you should be. Now let's go back to our paper pack. Pull this sheet out. On the back side is what we're looking for. Let's go ahead and turn this. Measure over 3.25 inches and cut it. The larger piece goes in reserves. Now measure over 6 inches and cut it. We're going to apply glue to the back and we're going to mount that right on our pocket. You're going to need a poinsettia and some leaves. All I'm going to do here is I'm going to tear off the top of this. You can use whatever leaf that you would like. I'm going to glue one here and one here. And then I'm going to glue my poinsettia right over the top. So let's do that. Let's set this off to the side and work on our fold-out page. Grab a piece of cardstock from your reserves or new piece. What we need is a 4.75 inch by 6.25 inch piece. So I'm going to measure on over 4.75 and cut this. Then I'm going to turn it and measure over 6.25 and cut. Okay, we are 4.75 inches wide. At the 4-inch mark, let's score and then measure over 1/8 of an inch and score again. And I gotta move mine here. Let's fold on our score lines. Okay, let's set this off to the side. In your reserves, you will have this. Flip it over. We are going to use our paper cutter to cut this Merry Christmas out. So I'm just going to cut this right on my paper cutter to make sure my lines are straight. All of this will go in my reserves. With the flaps out to the left, I am going to now pinch them all back behind. This panel piece should fit perfectly, right like this, so let's glue that down. This is what yours should look like. Let's set this off to the side. In your reserves, you will find this. On the back side, it looks like this. We do need to trim this up just a bit. We're going to measure over 3 7/8 and cut it. This should now fit good right in here. Let's go ahead and grab some black cardstock. In your reserves, locate a piece of scrap cardstock. What we are looking for is one that's going to be wide enough to have flaps to wrap around the back, but our main measurement is approximately 3 3/4 inches this way. So if you need to cut a new piece, we need 3 3/4 inches and then one that is long enough to wrap flaps around the back. Now once you have that, we're going to go ahead and punch across the top. Now we are going to lay our score tape across the bottom, remove it, mount our pocket, wrap the edges around the back, and you can trim these down and tack it. Now let's apply our glue to the back. Mount this inside of our fold out, making sure our flaps are off to the right. And we are not on our score marks. Let's get our piece that goes here. Now in your reserves you will find this. It's about, I think, 4 by 6. If you flip it over, you will notice that it's going to need a little bit of trimming. So we're going to trim off about 1/8 from one side. Once you've trimmed it, you'll notice you will fit on that pocket. So now turn it, measure down 2.5 inches and cut it. Let's apply glue and mount that. Next, in your reserves, you will find the trim piece of Merry Christmas. And all we're going to do here is lay that down and trim how much we need, and then we're going to glue this down. Put the rest of this in your reserves. Let's attach our pocket. Again, we're going to grab it like so. And when it looks straight, you are going to pinch it. And you are going to tack the back down. Now let's grab 2 poinsettias. I have mine that are die cut. You can grab the red, the white, whatever, if you're using the packaged flowers. Now I had torn up a bit of this, and I am going to use it. And the first thing that I am going to do is glue this one down right like this. So that's what I'm going to do. And I don't need the stem. And then I need a second one. And I'm going to apply my glue. And I'm going to use this last piece to go right on top there. I'm first going to glue down one right here. And then the other gets angled right like this. Now all I need to do is flip it over, apply my score tape around the edges, one down the middle, and we are going to mount this in our book. Mine is mounted. Let's move on to page 6. Page 6 is right here. So let's get started on that. In your reserves, you will find this. We're going to turn this, measure over 8 inches, and cut. Set this off to the side. Grab a piece of cardstock, measure over 1.5 inches, and the large piece goes in reserves. Let's get our 1/2 inch punch out, and we are going to punch all the way down. This is what you should have. We will be trimming off. Let's grab our score tape. And we are going to put a piece all the way down the side. Really need to make sure this is down so that it stays down. Otherwise, sometimes if you don't have your score tape down good enough, and when you mount this, you want to make sure that you crease it down really good. Otherwise, when you're putting your photo mats and stuff in there, it might go through if you didn't push all the way down. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this. I am going to trim off some of my flaps to make them smaller. And we are just going to tack that down. You're going to need 2 things from your reserves. The rest of the Merry Christmas trim piece. And you will grab your bears. So what you are going to want to do is we need a blue strip. looking at it like this, measure over 1 inch and cut it. Put the larger in your reserves, turn this, measure down 8 inches and cut it. Let's grab our glue. We are going to apply glue to the back, and that's the side with the bear print. We're just going to place this right down here. Oops, I got a little too much glue there. And then what we're going to do is, this does need to be trimmed up just a little bit. So if you measure over 8 inches and cut that, then we can glue it right down here. And we're going to do that. Now all we need to do is measure about 8 inches of bling, and we are going to glue that down right like this. This page is complete. Flip it over, score tape around the perimeter, one down the middle, and mount it in your book. I've got mine mounted. Let's move on to page 7. We are on page 7. And this is completely optional whether you want to mat this down or leave it as a picture mat. I did mount mine. I kind of like that. And inside we have a couple pockets. And we have some thicker lace. So we're going to go ahead and create that. Open your paper pack. It's your first sheet that we want. Measure over 6 inches and cut it. Put this one in reserves. Let's turn that. Measure down 8 inches and cut it. Okay, so we have this, flip it over. We're going to use this for our pocket. Grab a piece of cardstock, measure over 5.5 inches and cut it. Grab your deep edge punch, so this is 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches wide. The other side of the cardstock, of course, goes in your reserves. So we're just going to go ahead and punch all along the long side. Okay, let's get our score tape, mount this pocket, score tape along the bottom, remove your score tape, mount your pocket, fold around the back of your flaps and tack it down. Now, apply glue to the back of this and mount this all the way down at the bottom. You will have black up here. Okay, I am using a very wide band of lace trim. I'm just going to measure across what I need. And let's glue that down. I got mine down. Let's go ahead and work on our fold out. Grab a piece of cardstock, looking at it like this, measure over 8 inches and cut it. Turn it, measure over 5 3/4 inches and cut it. Stick this one off in reserves. So we should be 8 inch by 5 3/4 inches. Let's grab our scoreboard. We have this at 5 3/4 inches wide. Measure over to 5 1/16 and score it. Now, you're going to want to measure over from your first score line 1/8 inch, and you are going to score it again. I'm going to be right there. Let's fold on our score lines. Okay, set your fold out off to the side. Let's get into our paper pack. And we are going to pull out the season's greetings. On the flip side is what we want. You're going to measure over 5 inches and cut it. Put this one in reserves. We are going to turn it, measure down 7 7/8 and cut it. The small piece will go in your reserves. If you notice, and let's double check our cutting, that this is actually going to fit in the front of your panel. So let's work on the front side first. That one piece that we just stuck in reserves, if you flip it over, this is actually the front of our pocket. So set this aside. We're going to get into some black cardstock. In your reserves, you will find a good size of black cardstock. It's 8.5 inches wide, and it is about 5.5 inches this way. We are going to trim this down. Let's set these off. But let's go ahead and punch across the top of the long side. Let's do some trimming. Measure over 6.5 inches and cut it. Before we do any more trimming on this, what we want to do is trim this up. If you look right here, it is going to fit perfectly. However, the pocket that I do have on the original is a little bit shorter. So if you turn this and measure over 3 1/8 and cut it, then we will cut this down. You should be here. Let's apply our glue to the back. Just in case you cut a little bit off. Let's, in the middle, leaving some flaps, we're just going to bring that right up there. Now we're going to put this on our paper cutter, and we're just going to trim right along the bottom there. Okay, so let's get our score tape out and mount our pocket. And we're going to tack back the flaps. Let's go ahead, apply some glue. Fold back your flaps. The flaps should be on your left-hand side. Fold them back, and let's mount this panel page. Okay. We will decorate this in just a moment, but let's finish up on the inside. Go ahead and flip that on over, set it to the side, and let's get our pieces. Now, in your paper pack, we are going to get this second sheet out. Already in our reserves, we have this. We're not going to touch this. We're going to use that actually for our right-hand page. We only need a little bit off this one, so we're not going to disturb that one yet. Okay. We are going to measure over 5 inches and cut it. Okay, we're going to stick the larger piece off in reserves. We are going to turn it this way, and we are going to measure over 7 7/8 and cut it. This goes in reserves. This should fit inside your panel, and it does. Let's get our side pocket ready to go. Grab a piece of cardstock. It's 11 inches long. Measure over 2 1/8 inch and cut. Grab your deep edge punch, and we are going to punch along the long side. Grab your score tape. Place a strip of it down the left side of this. You're going to remove the score tape. You are going to mount this down, making sure you press down really good. You're going to fold back the flaps behind and tack them down. In your reserves, you will find this, and the back is this. You need to measure over 7/8 of an inch and cut a strip. Now turn this, measure down 7 7/8 and cut it. The small piece goes in your reserves. You are going to apply glue to the back of this, and we are going to mount that just like that. Okay, with your flaps off to the right, we are going to apply glue to the back of this, and we are going to mount it to the inside of this. Okay, it is time to get this on here. So all we're going to do is, to make sure it's straight, we're going to pinch it, flip it over, and tack that down. Let's decorate the front panel. Grab a piece of lace and cut it to fit. You'll want a piece of lace that isn't too long to cover your season's greetings. And let's glue that down. Now we are going to cut a piece of bling to fit across, and we're going to glue that down. For decorating this, you will want a leaf, you will want a red type poinsettia, maybe a filler, gold leaf, and I'm using Julie Herrick's white porcelain poinsettia. So the first thing I'm going to do is apply glue to my leaf, and you can do this any way you want if you're not using these leaves. So, and I'm just going to stick that right like this. I am going to put some gold off to the side. Like that. Whoops, I got a clump of glue there. I am going to put the porcelain poinsettia down. And I'm going to just put that right like that. I'm going to put this one right here. And I'll fluff that up in a moment. And I am going to use a filler just to stick right under here. There. Now, as soon as this dries, I can flip it over, apply my score tape around, and on this one, you could get away with one down the middle. And then we're going to mount that right in our book. I have mine mounted now. Let's move on to page 8. We are on page 8. Let's get started. In your reserves, you will find this. Let's turn that and measure over 8 inches and cut. Now actually you will have 2 of these. The one that we're looking for is the 6 inches wide one. And then of course we're going to measure over 8 inches and cut that. Go ahead and put this off in your reserves. Let's do our side pocket. In your reserves, you will have a piece of cardstock that is 11 inches long. Let's measure over 1 1/4 inches and cut it. Grab your score tape. Place it on the left side of your sheet. You're going to remove your score tape. You're going to mount this right on top, making sure you smooth this down really good. And you're going to wrap the edges around the back and tack it down. Okay, so all I did on this page was grab a piece of 1 1/2 inch wide lace and I glued it down right on top. So you'll measure a piece up to fit, and about 1 1/2 inches. If you only want to go 1 1/4, that is fine too. Let's glue that down. This is where you should be. You are going to cut a piece of bling to fit, and then you're going to glue that down. This is what yours should look like. Let's grab a poinsettia and some leaves if you have some left of scraps, or use a new one. When you put this down, I still have to put my center in here. You are not going to go over the left side of your page, so you're going to glue it down here. You may want to slip a piece of scrap cardstock in there to make sure that you don't get any glue on there. So I'm going to place mine right there. I am going to put a leaf here. Actually, my leaf went right here and here. So let's glue that down, and I got to get my center in there. This is what yours should look like. After everything's dried, flip it over. You will put score tape around the outside, 1 down the middle, and mount this in your book. I've got mine mounted. Let's move on to page 9. We're on page 9, which has the waterfall here. and a fold out. And our fold out. We also have the Christmas tree cut out for a pocket, and we have a pocket right here. So let's work on that. In your paper pack, let's take out this sheet. We're going to go ahead and measure over 6 inches and cut it. Put this one off in reserves. Turn this, measure down 8 inches and cut it. Stick this in reserves. Let's work on our pocket. Okay, in your paper pack you will find the second one of this. Let's pull this one out. Let's flip this over, and we're going to be very careful when we cut this. These are 6 by 6 panels. What we are looking for is this one. So we are just going to cut this right down the middle, and then we're going to cut across with our paper cutter. These are your leftover pieces. Let's stick these all off in reserves. We are going to cut this down. Now, looking at your piece, we are going to turn it, measure down 3 3/4 inches, and we are going to cut that. Let's get some black cardstock to mount behind here for our pocket. Out of my reserves, I have a piece here that's 8 1/2 inches wide. I am going to turn it and measure over 4 1/4 inches and cut that down. So my final piece is 8 1/2 inches wide, 4 1/4 inches this way. I'm going to grab my 1/2 inch punch, and I'm going to punch along the long side. Grab your score tape, place a piece at the bottom. You are going to remove your score tape. You're going to mount your pocket and wrap your tabs around the back and tack it down. Then we're going to go ahead and glue our front panel to our pocket down. This is where you should be right now. We are going to go ahead and measure a piece of trim, lace trim, that will fit the bottom to the top, and we're going to glue that down. Okay, let's set this off to the side and work on our fold out. Grab a piece of cardstock, measure over 6 inches and cut it. The smaller half goes back into your reserves. Let's turn this and measure over 8 inches and cut it. Get your scoreboard out. We are 6 inches across. At 5 1/2 inches, let's do our first score mark. Then measure over about 1/8 of an inch and score your second line. Fold on your score marks. Now let's grab our 1/2 inch punch and punch along the long side. Okay, so flaps are off to your left. Your decorated punch border is here. Let's flip it over and work on the inside. In your reserves, you will have this piece. Flip it over, measure over 4 7/8, and let's make sure we are going to fit, and we will. Now, let's turn it, measure down 7 7/8, and cut it. Set this off to the side. What we're after now in our reserves is this piece. We are going to cut out the tree. So let's turn this, and we are going to cut just above the star. Put this in your reserves. Okay. Let's go ahead, just flip this upside down. I like to stay consistent on how I cut. But you are going to slice off this piece right on the other side of the teddy bear. I would say give yourself about a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch, and from the side of his foot there, and slice it. That should put you about as wide as this. If you need to trim it down a little more, it's that's fine. What we are going to do is we are going to start right where the tip of this branch is, and we are just going to fussy cut all the way around this tree, all the way down, until we hit the side of the boy's head. And then we are just going to go over that and then straight across. And I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, I did my fussy cutting around, and as you notice, this is what I did. Now, to help this out, to tone down some of the background color back there, I have my Olive Grove ink out, and I am inking around the edges, and I'm lightly blotting in between there, just here and there, some of the green, as you can see. But I did do the edges because I'm not that great of a fussy cutter. And just going around the whole thing. Now, on this particular piece, because we have so many cuts in and out, we are going to glue this down to cardstock, just like this. So, and once we have this glued down to cardstock, we are going to cut around, and it's going to make this a lot stronger. Okay, you should be at this point. We are going to mount this down. I am going to use my score tape. I'm going to flip that right on over, place it down at the bottom, and also down over here as well. Now I'm going to remove my score tape, and I am going to mount this just like this, and I'm going to make sure I press down really good. Okay, once you have this down, we're going to put glue all to the back, and we are going to mount it on the inside of our fold out. Our flops should be off to the right. Make sure that you do not get it on your score mark. Let's go do that. This is what you should have. Let's set this off to the side and work on the outside of that panel. In your reserves, you will find this sheet. Let's turn it, measure down 7 7/8 and cut it. This goes in your reserves. Now measure 4 7/8 and cut it. Put this in reserves. This is what we want, and make sure yours fits your panel before we get going. And mine fits perfectly. In your paper pack, locate the 4x6 panel page and remove it. On the back side it looks like this. What we're going to do with this is we are going to separate each one of these using our paper cutter. So let's cut on the lines in between and get those panel pieces out. Okay, out of all of those panels, the two you are going to stick back in reserve are the ones with the blue trim edges. Also in your reserves you will have this one. Pull that out. We do need that. Also in your reserves, it's not in our reserves, we will grab that when we are ready. So for now, let's just set these off to the side. Let's set this off to the side and get our black cardstock. Okay, let's grab some cardstock. If you can find 3 good size ones in your reserves, you will do that. What we need is a total of 3 pieces that are 4 1/8 inches wide by 7 inches long. I got my 3 pieces. The first thing I want to do is trim punch across this edge on all of them. Okay, getting our scoreboard out. And this is 7 inches long, and I have the tips over on this side. At 6 1/2 inches, I am going to score on each one of these. And then what we're going to do is we are going to fold on the score lines. Okay, all my flaps are at the top. Let's start doing this. I'm going to fold this back and tuck it under. The first one I'm going to do is I am going to mount the toy soldier one. and leaving enough black on each side to even. So let's glue that one down. Alright, I got the toy soldier one. The flap is at the top. I'm going to flip that up. Excuse me. And the one I am looking for now is this one with the gold. If you flip it over, you will see a candle. And this should fit right in here. If you need to trim a little off the bottom, go ahead and do so. You do not want to have your piece to hit your score mark. So I'm going to trim mine up just a bit. I trimmed mine, and I'm confident it is going to fit without hitting my score mark. And I am going to mount this, centering it. Okay, that one is done. I'm going to set this one off to the side. On the next one, I have, the flap is at the top. I'm going to fold back the flap underneath, and I am going to mount the candle one. Now, if you are still a little bit too long, then what you are going to want to do is trim a little off the top. You will do this with each of them to make sure that they fit good in these panels. And I am mounting this center. Once you get that down, if you flip this over, set this off to the side. We do need to get the print that goes in here. Let's grab our next one, and before we apply glue, fold back the flaps behind the back. And I'm just going to trim a hair off the top here, and then I'm going to mount it. The flap is up here. I'm going to flip this up. And now I'm going to make sure I fit here. And if I need to trim it, I'll trim it, and I'm going to glue that down. Alrighty, this is where you should be. Let's go ahead and get in our paper pack to find the one that goes behind here. In your paper pack, you will find this. Oops. And using my paper cutter, I am actually going to take the ho 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 one out here, or you can take this piece over here out. All of this goes back in our reserves. Flip the ho 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 one over, and this will fit perfectly. Let's glue that down. Make sure your flap is at the bottom when you do that, so you don't glue them upside down. Now, on each one of these, on the flap, so that's the back, this is the front, we are going to apply score tape across right where the score line is, not on the score line, but just on the other side. We're going to do that for each one of these. Then what we are going to do is trim off the excess black showing. This is what you should have. Let's work with one at a time. Okay. I am going to remove the score tape off the soldier. This is the one that goes at the top. And I'm going to center this in between here. I'm going to fold back the flap, and the top of this is going to align with the top of that. So I am going to do this the best I can. And I can't tell without getting my head in there if I am even. That's pretty even. And then you're just going to smooth it down. Okay, flip that up. Let's go to the next one, the one with the light or the candle. Fold those back, and you are going to bring the tip of this to the bottom of that and keep them straight. Flip that up. And the last one, we are going to do the same thing. Trying to keep these straight. And if you need to use your stripes as a guide, that's always good. And always remember to lift up and smooth them down. So there is that. Now what we want to do is put this on the front of our fold out with the flaps off to the left, but you are going to want to use score tape. So score tape around the outside, one down the middle, and then we are going to mount this. This is where you should be. We are done with this page, other than to hook on our fold out. And again, this is 8 inches long, so is this, so sometimes just making sure that it's straight up and down like that. You're even, pinch it and tack down the back. We're going to flip that over and put score tape around the outside. We can do one down the middle, and then we are going to mount this in our book. I've got mine mounted in. Let's move on to page 10. We are on page 10. It is very simple. In your reserves, you will find this. Let's turn that, measure up 8 inches, and cut it in reserves. Grab a piece of lace, cut it to fit this side of the page, and glue it down. Now flip this over, apply score tape to the outside, one down the middle, and mount this in your book. I've got mine mounted. We are moving on to page 11. We're on page 11, so let's go ahead and create that. In our paper pack, let's open up to this page with the fireplace and take it out. Measure over 6 inches and cut it. This side goes in reserves. Let's turn our paper, measure over 8 inches and cut it. Grab a piece of scrap cardstock that is at least 8.5 inches wide. We're going to go ahead and measure over 1.5 inches and cut it. Your final piece will be 8.5 inches by 1.5 inches. Grab your 1/2 inch punch, and we are going to punch along the long side. Now, usually when I do pockets that are suspended, in order to keep them tight, I usually cut them at 6 inches. We're going to actually do something a little different, and we are going to make sure our pocket is tight, and we are going to wrap around to the back. So let's do our score tape. Make sure it's down. Remove the score tape. And we are going to mount this down. Now, when you mount this down, make sure you leave some flaps on the side, but start right here and push it tight all the way down and across. Now, when you flip this over, you are going to make sure you pull this around and tuck it around the back tight. So let's do one at a time to make sure we are tight enough. I've got this side tacked down on the back. Now, looking at it like this, I am going to slightly curve it. Not much, but slightly curve it and pull back around. Now I'm going to tack it down. This should make a very tight pocket so that if you were to stick something up underneath there, it's going to hold it and it's not going to fall down. Alright, let's find our trim piece. In your reserves, you will find this. We're going to go ahead and slice this sentiment panel off, and then we are going to slice the white trim piece off. This is what you should have. Put this in your reserves. This piece here, we are going to cut to fit across the top. You can use your trimmer or by hand. And we are going to glue that down just like this. You will have a little bit of black showing here and here. This is what you should have. Flip it over. Score tape goes around like a picture frame, one down the middle, and we are going to mount this in our book. I've got mine mounted, but before we move on to page 12, I want you to flip back to this page. I forgot something. In your reserves, we want to clip off family traditions. You can put this straight down right like this or mount it to the black cardstock and then trim around, and that's what I'm going to do, and then you're going to place that right there on the page. Moving on to page 12. We're on page 12, and this is what we are going to be creating. So first thing we want to do in our reserves is grab this sheet. Looking at it where the candy canes are like this, we are going to turn it and measure over 8 inches and cut it. This goes in our reserves. Now in your reserves, you will find a piece like this. It is 2.5 inches wide by approximately 8 inches long, and we do need that. So let's set that off to the side, and we need to grab some black cardstock. Grab a piece of black cardstock that is 11.5 inches long. Let's put glue. We're going to do this the real simple way. Glue to the back of this. In the center, over on the side, leaving about 1/16 of black showing, we are going to mount that. Now all we have to do is put this on our paper cutter and slice this, leaving about 1/16 of black showing here, all the way down. And I'll show you what that looks like. This is what you should have, and all we are going to do is center this in our paper. We're going to pinch it, and we are going to fold over and tack down our flaps on each one. In your reserves, you will find this, and where we're going to do is we are going to cut it just above the top of the rocking chair, right across here. Put this in reserves. Now, we are going to go ahead and cut around this, and all I did here was come up. I started right at the edge of the back of the rocking chair, and I just went all the way around. And I'm going to do that. And I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. This is how I cut her off, and notice I did cut along the bottom. Now, and I did go around the edges with a light brown or toffee crunch. Inked around the edges. Now I'm just going to apply glue to the back of this. I'm going to place it down on black cardstock, and I'm going to cut around to strengthen her. This is what I've got. She's back to the black cardstock. Now before gluing this down, grab a piece of black cardstock or some sort of scratch paper, and we are going to, it's so that you don't get glue on your paper. And I'm just pretty much going to say right here at where he meets from here on over, that crease is where it's at the edge here, so that's where I know glue needs to be, all the way over to about here. So I'm going to flip her over. Right here is that crease, and if I need to look again, I will, but I think I got it. Let's see. If I need to add more, I will. And we're just going to mount that right like that. Okay. I did pretty good. Now I'm going to flip it over, apply score tape around the edges, one down the middle, and mount this in my book. I've got mine in my book. We're on page 13. We're almost done. Page 13. Let's go ahead and create this page. In your paper pack, open up. On the back side of the soldier sheet is the one that we want, this. Let's go ahead and remove that. Measure over 6 inches and cut it. Now put this one in reserves. This one's done just a little bit different. So what we are going to do is right at the tip of this is our mark. This is the piece that we do need. We are short here, but I will show you what we do to fix that. So before we get onto this, let's grab our scissors. And all you are going to do, get this stuff off. All you are going to do, and you can use your trimmer, but we are going to cut along the postcards. Hello, there we go. We are going to mount this to black cardstock. So let's grab a piece of black cardstock. If you have a piece in reserves already, then you'll use that, but you will know, you will stick it to where you have your flaps off to the side. So let's glue this down. Now we are going to cut. We're going to leave the flap, but what we are going to do is cut straight over and leave about a 1/16 of black all the way around. When you get to the edge here, you're going to cut straight across. This is what you should have. Set this off to the side. Grabbing a piece of scrap cardstock, what you are going to do is grab a pencil and grab a ruler, and you're going to leave about 1/4 of an inch right here so that there's something to grab onto when we put the score tape down. Now let's put our ruler up, make a mark at 8 inches, and now let's cut that off. Now turn it, measure over 6 inches, and cut it. Grab a piece of score tape and put it right at the top of this. Remove your score tape. Now we are going to mount it just right over the score tape, making sure the score tape is covered completely. Okay, now once you've got that, double check to make sure you are 8 inches. If you're a little shy or just a hair more, you'll be okay, but the idea is to have our 8 inches. Now we can put our score tape down at the bottom. We're going to remove our score tape, and we are going to mount this and folding back the flaps and tacking them down. Let's decorate. I am using one of Julie Herrick's porcelain poinsettias. I did apply the Winkastella to it. And all I'm going to do here is just mount that right there. I'm going to grab another poinsettia. If you have the red packaged or if you're using a different color, go ahead. And this one just gets placed right like that. My insides are still a little wet with the little pearls, so. This page is complete. Oh, it is not complete. My bad. Grab some bling. Measure over enough to cover this top postal card and glue it down. Now this page is done. Flip it over, put score tape around the outside, one down the middle, and mount it in your book. Mine is mounted. Let's move on to our very last page. Page 14, our last page. Very simple, and we are going to start on that. In your reserves, you will find this. Let's turn turn this and measure over 8 inches and cut it. Okay, we're going to work with this. Let's grab a piece of cardstock. Okay, we want it to be wide enough, obviously, and we're going to do this the easy way. I have a piece that is very long. I'm just going to apply glue. This piece here is 6 inches wide. It's the same way that we do our other pockets. So we are just going to whoops, I almost messed that one up. That's okay. Let's mount this right here, leaving about a 1/16 of black showing across the top. I am not going to worry about that. I am going to wipe it off a little bit though. Okay, let's turn this and cut it all the way down underneath there. Okay, mine has some really wide flaps there, and I got to fix that. So let's apply our score tape at the bottom. Let's remove it. We are going to place this down, flip it over, and I'm going to trim my flaps down, and then I'm going to tuck them back and tack them down. Grab some lace and cut it to fit across, and we are going to glue that down. Grab a piece of bling, cut it to fit across your page of your pocket there, and glue that down. I'm using Julie Herrick's, one of her porcelain red poinsettias, and then I'm using a white poinsettia. We're going to glue that down right here, and I'm going to glue this one down right here. Now let's get our sentiment. In your reserves you will find sentiment Merry Christmas. We are going to cut that out, and we are going to mount it to black cardstock. And I have a scratch piece right here. And we are going to leave a little black showing around like we've been doing. And we are going to add a little glue to this. And this gets placed right like this. This page is complete. Flip it over, apply score tape to the back, one down the middle, and mount it in your book. Mine is in my book. The only thing we have left to do is attach the strap for the dress to close it. Okay, I would start with about 14 inches of ribbon. Here is our hook. I'm going to bring this up. We're going to feed one side through here and pull it through halfway, just like that. And we're going to feed the other side through, the other side of the little eye there. And then I'm just going to make sure that that's good. And that looks good to me, and I'm going to even up the tails here. Now, how I usually do it, now we don't have our picture mats in here, which is going to bulk this out. So you might want to wait to do this until you are completely done with your album, putting the mats in. You don't have to. I do recommend leaving this loose until you do, so that it gives you enough. So this is how it's done. We are going to hook one side, and like I said, you're going to want to leave it loose so that your album can go like this, okay? And everyone's album's going to be different depending on how many mats they use and whatnot. So all I do at this point is make sure I'm going straight across. And these look nice when they're going across. And then I pinch it. and I tack a little glue. Now mine, when I stand it up now, rehook it, I've got plenty of room. In fact, when I lay this down, it's probably going to unhook itself. It's going to loop out because I'm leaving myself enough room. So as far as the back, you can snip these off if you would like. All I did for this one was this, and I will show you how to do that. If I can find my scissors again. I did cut this off. Make sure that they are glued down. They are. I grabbed some more ribbon. And I went like this, so I'm looping it. And then all I did was grab a little glue here. And I tacked it back behind. And I'm going to tack it again. Now you don't have to do it this way. You can just make a regular bow, but this is how I did it. And now I'm just going to snip these up. I did have a flat back pearl, and I will put that on in just a moment. I am going to glue this down. A little hot glue there. And I'm going to grab a flat back pearl. Any one will work. I'm going to use this one. This album is complete other than the picture mats, which I allowed you to do on your own. And I want to say thank you very much for joining me on this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. There is going to be some information on how to email me here shortly. And don't forget, down underneath the video in the comments area is where you can find direct links to my store, my website store, as well as my eBay store, and also to Julie Herrick's Etsy store to get those porcelain poinsettias. So I hope you, once again, enjoyed this, and I'll be releasing another tutorial very shortly. Matter of fact, I think we got them one after the other lined up before the end of the year. We'll see you next time.